guys, we wanted to just get on and do a little video to talk a little bit about a post that Sean did, what was it, just a few months ago on Facebook?
I can't remember when it was, yeah.
Yeah, not too long ago on Facebook, Sean posted, well, you came across an old tithing
Yeah, we were decluttering.
receipt. Yeah. In one of your drawers, you found an old tithing receipt, and you're like, whoa. And it was just kind of like a reminder to you of how much we really did donate to this church, and I think it got you a little fired up, and you went on Facebook and you posted a picture of it and you shared your thoughts. And so we wanted to just do a little recap about that video, or about that post, because it's been shared over 1,500 times. Yeah. And yeah, so it was unexpected. It went crazy. Everybody was sharing it. There's a lot of positive feedback, also a lot of negative feedback, which we wanted to address a little bit of that. We kind of stopped reading the comments after we saw like a lot of the negativity. That's when we're like, all right, shut it off.
The shares were people who were, basically saying, this is how I feel too.
Yeah.
I think it was almost 1,500 shares, and I'd never had anything like that on social media go, get shared like that. I've never had anything like that. And I know that the people that were sharing it to say, look at this, this is how I feel too. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. And then, but I just wanted to talk about I read a few of the negative comments, and it was kind of just, I wished I could just express my thoughts, but I think we have gotten to a point where we've decided to not engage in an argument with some of these people. Yeah? I think Brooklyn's in her room. Yeah, all these, they're downstairs in their rooms.
So do you want to talk just a little bit about what the post said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell us why you think it gained so much traction. Like, what was it?
I've thought a lot about that. Like, why did it appeal to people? And I think a lot of people could resonate. In the Mormon Church, you're essentially told that you have to do certain things in order to not go to heaven per se. They have different degrees of heaven, but in order to go to the highest degree of heaven, which they call the celestial kingdom, in order to participate in that, which is the only place where you can be with your family eternally, and in order to get there and to, essentially earn that reward, is to be an active believing member in the church. And you have to adhere to a lot of different things to be temple worthy. You have to adhere to a lot of different things, and one of those things is that you have to pay tithing. So you can't go into the temple and participate in these, what we call saving ordinances. And you're not allowed to do that unless you pay 10% of your income in tithing. And so that's what we did for 20 adult years. And even as a teenager, I don't know about you, but as a teenager, I paid my tithing on anything that I earned, 10% of whatever I earned. Mm-hmm. And you pay that, and the way that they get you to pay that is, they call it fire insurance, for instance. They say, if, this is fire insurance. Essentially what they mean by that is that you won't go to hell, which is, kind of crazy, but that's just a little bit exaggerated. Mormons don't teach that if you don't pay your tithing, you'll go to hell. But what they do teach is that in order to be with your family forever, in the eternities, you've got to pay that tithing, that 10%. Now, it's 10% on your income for your entire life, everything that you earn. And one of the things they do is they basically tell you that it's not your money. That's one of the principles, is that it's not your money. And they even say that, hey, God has given you 100% of everything you have, and everything you earn is His. And all He's asking for in return is 10% back. There's certain things they do, Crystal, that they, when you get on the outside looking back, it's very interesting in order to get that money. One of the things that they do is they have what's called a tithing settlement. And so the local priesthood leader, the local, kind of the shepherd, the local guy who's the big shot, the bishop, he's called the bishop, and he's a lay leader, he doesn't get paid, but one of his predominant roles is to collect that money from all of the, members in the area. And so every year, at the end of the year, everyone is encouraged to sign up for what's called tithing settlement, and they have to basically go meet with the bishop, and they have to, sign that, this is how much tithing I paid. They actually print out a form. They say, this is how much you've paid in tithes, and this is how much you paid in fast offerings, which is an additional thing that people are expected to pay. And then they say, are you a full tithe payer? And it's kind of like a worthiness question, right? Mm-hmm. And are you a full tithe payer? And if you say no, then they will try to bring you up current by getting you to take out your checkbook. Most people take a checkbook with them when they go to tithing settlement, because if they're not current, it's the time to get current. Now, on the outside looking back, you recognize this for what it is, which is like a shakedown. It's kind of like, the mob showing up to collect, It's like, hey, we want that money. We need that money. And this is how they account for it and basically ensure that they get it. They'll say things to you like, surely you want the blessings. Surely you want the blessings for your family from paying an honest and full tithe. And what's interesting about this whole concept is that years ago, if you do research into the Mormon Church, they didn't used to even ask for 10% of your income. Years and years and years ago, it used to be 10% of your interest or your excess. Now, what that means, and I just learned this somewhat recently, but what that means is that if you earned a certain amount of money, but you've got a certain amount of expenses, like you got to buy your food, you got to pay for your bills, you got to pay for your cars, your houses, whatever. It's loud. Mm-hmm. So come to find out that it changed. Like they actually started requiring. Used to be if you had excess left over, we want 10% of what was excess, your extra, or like your savings. They changed it, and they basically came out. You can research this. It's all available to you. Go to like MormonThink.com. MormonThink.com is a good one, and you can research this and just click on tithing, and it'll kind of educate you about how everything that's changed over the years. And there was even a point in time back in history when one of the prophets said, oh my gosh, we So yeah, at one point in time, people don't realize that one of the prophets actually said, you can look this up, it's historical, like one of the prophets actually said, we don't need more tithing. Like at the end of the year, we'll have so much money and we won't need your tithes anymore. We'll be self-sufficient. But I think that someone got involved at some point and realized that, this is just too valuable of an income source, and we need to keep this coming. So it changed, actually. It changed from 10% of your excess to 10% of your income. They switched it, and I think they realized, like, wow, we can bring in a lot of money, and that's one of the reasons they formed a business division of the church. Like the church has its own for-profit arm. They have a non-profit arm, they have a for-profit arm. The church is worth, just in one of their stock portfolios that was leaked on Mormon Leaks, you can look it up, go to mormonleaks.com or whatever it is, Google it, $32 billion in stocks. They had pharmaceutical stocks and stuff like that. It's crazy. And that's not counting, like, if you wanted to determine what is the worth of the church, it's got to be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. It's crazy. They're like the largest landowner in the entire state of Florida. They own more land, private land, than anybody else in the entire state. And they own land everywhere. Like everywhere you go, in every major city, you'll see Mormon chapels, you'll see Mormon temples in these dense populated, ultra high-end real estate markets. That alone, they've got to be one of the biggest real estate holding companies in the entire world. I mean, they're worth a lot of money. They bring in $8 billion a year just in tithing revenue. That's just annual. Annual $8 billion a year comes in like clockwork from active members like us. We paid a ton of money in tithing. And
we thought that a lot of it was going to charity, and come to find out, not much of it did.
It's funny you should say that, because I've got this little sheet here, and the church on average donates about $40 million a year to charity, which they say here represents only about 0.57% of their tithing income. Okay? So if they're bringing in 7-8 billion a year in tithing income, and they're only paying out 40 million a year in charity, they're paying 0.57%, 0.57. Whereas, meanwhile, the congregants like us are required to pay 10% of our income. Okay, and you've got single moms that work 2 and 3 jobs, and they're working their butts off, and they're like, hey, I can barely afford to live. And things will be said like, no, first you pay your tithing before you buy your food, before you pay your electric bill, before you pay for your childcare, you pay that tithing.
I definitely had experiences. I was not ever a single mom, but I think it's even worse for, parents who are trying to support a family. But when I was single, I had like no money left. I only had exactly the amount that I needed to pay my rent, and it was also the amount that I owed in tithing. And so I felt like the right thing to do was for me to take my rent money and pay tithing, and I did. And I just had to be late, and I got a fine for being late on my rent. So it's just like those types of things. That's what the church does to you. They make you think like you have to pay tithing above all else.
But did they make you? That's one of the biggest gripes.
The comments, when I did read some of the comments, they were saying, well, nobody made you pay that. We're like, really? What does the doctrine teach? Like, tell us about why we did feel like we were forced to pay that. Because of our beliefs. We believed in the church. So we believed in the gospel, the doctrine. So that's why we paid.
It's one of those things where it's like, not paying would be me, a covenant member who went to the temple and made covenants that I would dedicate all my time, talents, energies, all my means, my money, everything to the building up of the kingdom of God, as they call it. I've consecrated. It's the law of consecration. I have consecrated everything. So if I was to go to a tithing settlement as an active member and to that shakedown, so to speak, and then the bishop says to me, have you paid a full tithe? Now, I could be dishonest, yes. I could make the decision to be dishonest.
Yeah.
But as an honest person, I would look at him and I would say yes. Or I would look at him and say, I haven't come current. Mm-hmm. And so like the $34,000 check that I posted on Facebook, that tithing slip, that was one of those, I wrote it out. I wrote out the check, and that's some tithing that I owed. And I wrote those checks all the time. I wrote those checks.
Can we get a refund?
They don't. It's funny too, because the old tithing slips years ago, it didn't used to say that tithing is non-refundable. In fact, the slip that I have, it didn't say that tithing was non-refundable.
Oh, really?
Only in recent years they added a little thing there, designation at the bottom that says tithing is it is a contribution that is voluntary, and it is completely non-refundable. The reason that they had to do that is because so many people, there's even people filing class action lawsuits against the church. The church has put out those essays on LDS.org where the gospel topic essays basically incriminate the church and make the church look like a fraud on their own website. And you've got people that are suing them now saying, hey, I didn't know any of that. You knew it. You hid it. You didn't tell me, and I wouldn't have given you all that money had I known that. Therefore, you took the money under false pretenses. That is fraud. That is fraudulent. That is criminal. That's how I feel. And I think the reason that the post got shared almost 1,500 times is because people are like, hey, I want a refund too. Like, I didn't know any of this either. Like, it's not cool. Yeah. Not cool to take people's money with false pretense. Like, for instance, not cool if Crystal marries me and there's a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't tell her. I've got this dirty laundry, all these skeletons in my closet, all these things that I never told her. And then we're married for a while, 20 years, whatever, and 50 years, whatever. And all of a sudden, like, this stuff starts coming out. And I'm like, yes, that is true. And she's like, well, you're admitting that's true? You're admitting that Joseph Smith had 40 wives? You're admitting that there's 7 different versions of the first vision account? You're admitting that the book of Abraham was not properly translated? It was a joke? You're admitting that? You're admitting that blacks in the priesthood was very much politically charged, and yet you took my money, and yet you married me? Yeah. Like, I married you?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have married you.
Yeah.
And that's how people feel. It's like, I wouldn't have given you all that money. And then people say, yeah, like you said, like, why are we paying it? Well, look at me and ask me if I want to be together with my family forever. And I'll tell you, yes, more than anything. But if the church is going to frame it as, if you don't give me that money, you can't be with your family forever,
because you will
like
lose your
extortion.
temple recommend. They will legitimately take away your temple recommend. And what does that mean? That means you are not worthy to be with your eternal family.
No.
So it's heavy, you guys. Like, of course we're going to pay it. Why would we not? If we believe that the church is true, the doctrine is true, we are absolutely going to pay it. So yeah, I feel like we were forced to pay it, because who's not going to choose to be with their family?
That's what it came down
That's
to
the
for
only
me. I mean, if you
alternative.
believe, and we believed, and we were born into it, and and basically brainwashed to believe it our entire lives, and then of course you're gonna participate. It's a given. If you do the same thing if you were born Muslim, you do the same thing if you were born a Hindu or Jehovah's Witness or Scientologist, and you would do it because you want those rewards that are promised, and you believe. I mean, that's all you've been taught your whole life, to believe. You believe, and then So, with all that said, let me see if there's any other things.
I want to just say one more thing that bothered me the most about discovering the truth about tithing and where our tithing money goes. Well, once I discovered that the church was not true, then I started to think about, wait, then why are they building all of these really expensive, elaborate temples and then requiring their members to go and spend hours of their time doing work for the dead? It's like, oh my gosh, like these temples are meant to do work for the dead. We are spending so much money on the dead. Like, why not spend money on the people that need it now, that are living? And why not spend the money and the time? So that just made me furious to realize the money and the time that is going into these temples.
And you've got how many people, how many hundreds of thousands of Mormons need jobs, and it kills me because they won't even pay for a janitor to come and clean the buildings. Like, they're so shrewd and so cheap. They use all the tithing money that comes in to build more chapels and to build more temples and pay for all this stuff. And yet they have to they make the members clean the building on a weekly basis for free, and they promise you that that's how you're going to get your blessings if you do this. So it's $1 billion. I mean, you're talking about a $100+ billion conglomerate, and they won't even pay to get their toilets cleaned. It's crazy. On top of that, the highest ranking officials actually get paid. So this is one of the things that killed me, because the highest ranking, the prophet, the apostles, these general authorities, they actually get paid. And I didn't know that. Like, I was on a mission for 2 years in Richmond, Virginia. I was teaching people every day. I was teaching lessons. I think it was the lesson was number 5. And I was teaching people that, hey, you got to pay your tithing. And guess what? It's great because we don't even have paid ministry. All the money that we bring in goes towards helping the poor. You can be assured of that. And it's not true.
Yeah.
It's a lie. And I didn't know that. I was telling lies, which doesn't make me a liar, but I hate that I told people that over and over again, thousands of times. I actually got people to pay tithing because they're like, yay, finally a church that doesn't have paid ministry. But we do. They do have paid ministry. And those guys have, they have pensions, they have stipends. They actually get, some of them, a couple $100,000 in income a year. On top of that, they get perks, like they get second homes. At the minute they become a general authority, their houses, their mortgages are paid off. All their debts are paid for. Some of them get perks, like they get a second home in a mountain location, all paid for, that they can use with their family. They don't have to pay for missions for their children. They don't have to pay for all the schooling for their whole posterity, like all their kids and grandkids and beyond. All their whole family posterity, everything is paid for and covered. Like, these are some pretty massive perks. They fly all over the place. That's all taken care of. Like, you'd be shocked. It's a charmed life. And then it's sickening for someone like me that has been at the local level and seen struggling people hurting so bad. My one friend, her husband died. And so that income source was gone. And here she's working her butt off trying to support her children. And she just has to keep paying the tithing, while these guys don't have to pay it. The guys at the top, they don't pay it anymore. Mm-hmm. And it just kills you, stuff like this. It just kills you because you start to see it for what it is. Mm-hmm. And, they get away with it because it's religion. Mm-hmm. They get away with it because they say, well, hey, you can't touch us, we're exempt. We're a not-for-profit. It's really crazy stuff, you guys. Like, how does a church, without using tithing dollars, how does a church get $32 billion in stock in a for-profit portfolio? Where did it come from? Where did it come from? I want to know. Where did the money come from? How did it get there? Where did it start? It doesn't come from nowhere. Okay? Nobody's that smart. Okay?
On top of the tithing, we've got the fast offering, and they definitely guilt you into that when you go to tithing settlement. I remember as a single woman, my bishop asking me if I'm paying fast offerings, and that's the same bishop who knew that I was already struggling to pay a full tithing. So it's like he's already knows that I'm barely able to support myself, and I'm paying a full tithing, but then he's asking for me to pay fast offering, which is in addition to tithing. Which is funny because
it's funny because the Mormon Church, like, it's like a badge of honor. It's like keeping up with the Joneses. It's like, people pay like a lot in fast offering stuff, and then they tell each other, whisperings, like it's crazy. Like, and I've heard people say like, I just paid so much in fast offering. It's like, good job. Yeah.
There's
Way
no
to
like
go.
recognition
Badge
for
of
being
honor.
a full tithe payer. That's already a requirement, but to be like it all depends on how much you're gonna spend on the fast offering, and it's just that's.
And
where the
usually, like, it's
competitiveness
crazy
comes in.
because Jesus, when Jesus was on the earth, who did he choose as his apostles? Like, it was the motley crew of, like, these guys were rough and they were wild and they were fishermen. Like, these guys were not prominent businessmen. They weren't polished. They weren't like overly educated. That kind of speaks to me. I kind of like that, but not the Mormon Church. Like, the people who get in leadership, usually highly successful. Usually the bishops have success in business of some sort. They want those business management skills. And same with the apostles. Usually, like, they choose like brain surgeons. Right now, I think the cardiac, the cardiologist, the heart surgeon is the prophet right now. And then if you look at his counselor, he was like a Supreme Court justice. And you look at his counselor, and it was like this such and such a lawyer. And you look at all the apostles, and it's always like lawyers and really high-ranking military officials. And it's always like really predominant professionals. It's not like what Jesus chose. It's not. And even at a local level, you'll see it. Like, you can almost predict who's going to be the next bishop, the next stake president. Usually the most successful guys who are active, and they choose these people. I've been a member my whole life. I'm not making this crap up. It's legitimate. This is real stuff. So it gets hard when you get on the outside looking back. I know that a lot of members would never see it, but when you're on the outside looking back and you go, what? Like, this is crazy. Yeah. Like, this is crazy what they do with the money, what they don't do with the money, the kind of the cult-like strategies they employ to get the money, and it's crazy that people just keep going along with it.
You basically are taught that everything that you've ever earned is God blessed you with that, so it's actually all of God's money anyway, so can't you just give him 10% back? That's how I always looked at it, like, oh my gosh, I'm so selfish if I can't even give God 10% back because I owe him all of it. Like, I didn't work hard for this, God gave it to me, It's just like, you don't get to, like, own. Yeah.
Anything else there?
No. Good to know that.
In the post that I did, I posted like 4 references. Maybe we can post those in like
I'll see if I can
comments
post
or
the
something.
links, yeah.
All the members, if they hear that the church donated $1 million to Haiti, and they all go, "Yay! It's so exciting!" $1 million is nothing when you're bringing in $8 billion a year in tithing. It's nothing. It's like me donating a dime. Here's your dime. Yay! Like, come on, guys. So you got to just start seeing the bigger picture here. People don't know anything. Why? Because the church is not transparent with their finances. You'll never meet an organization that is so secretive. There is zero transparency around their finances. Like I said, it wasn't until just recently that I realized that the higher-ups in the church, lots of them are paid. And yet we're taught all our lives they're not. It's criminal. It's wrong. Don't do that. Teach people that you have paid ministry, and let people decide if that's something that they want to opt in for. And another thing, like, don't make tithing a prerequisite for going to heaven. What is that? I think that might be a definition of a cult. If you say to people, if you don't give us your money, then you can't be with your family forever. That might be the definition of, I would say that's a cult-like characteristic. That's very threatening.
Yeah.
It's extortion, in my opinion. You're using, and if people knew the history of tithing, they knew that it changed. They knew that at one point the church said we're not even going to need it anymore. If they knew the history, they would know that it's full-blown extortion for people's money, just taking people's money. If ever there was a great big pyramid scheme where everybody's chipping in and they don't get anything for it, what do they get for it? Just, these are just invisible promises.
Yeah.
Invisible promises.
This information, I think, all members should know about. They need to know about where the money's going, first of all. And second of all, I think that we need to understand the fact that we really don't have the choice. If you believe the doctrine is true, then you have no other choice. You have to pay that 10% tithing.
Yeah, and I don't feel like I had a choice to be a member or not. Truthfully, like, on top of that, people say, well, you didn't have to participate in the church. Really? When you're raised that way and you're indoctrinated that way and brainwashed that way, you think I felt like I had a choice?
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like you had a choice? Wasn't it just feel like it's required?
Yeah.
If you're a good person, it's what you do.
You're so brainwashed, you think it's the absolute truth. So it's like, well, I guess there's no other
You have a choice, but
option.
You're basically choosing to not go to heaven. Anyway, bye guys. We appreciate you being with us. We just want to see some change. We love Mormon people. We have family that is very active Mormon, and we love them. We care about them. We want to see positive change for their benefit. It's not really for us, and we're not on some vendetta to hurt the church or anything like that.
It's just things I wish we would have known.
There's a lot of people like us that are feeling uncomfortable, and they're hurting, and they're confused, and they're conflicted, and we want to make it better for those people.
All right, thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks.